Coming up, could you see yourself living to 100? With National Centenarian Day right around the corner, we're going to share some tips on living a long, full life into triple digits. Aging in America is next. You're watching America Right Now. Welcome back to America Right Now. I'm Tom Basile. Living to 100. You think you might? More Americans are doing it right now. There are nearly 90,000 centenarians living in the United States. Now, wait for this. That number is expected to grow to 600,000 by 2050. Yesterday was National Centenarian Day. So, how do these folks do it? Do people who live longer have similar traits and lifestyle practices? To help us crack the code, let's welcome in Sherri Snelling. She is the author of the new book, Me Time Monday, the weekly business plan to find balance and joy for a busy life, and Dr. Salvatore Giorgiani. He's a senior science advisor for the Men's Health Network. Thank you both so much for this. I was with a group of World War II vets and Purple Heart recipients here in New York this week, including one that was 100 and another one who was 95. And I got to tell you, they were incredibly impressive. Their cognitively, their physical stamina, I couldn't believe it, really. Sherri, you've actually studied centenarians. For these folks who live longer, is there a roadmap? Give us some hints.
I think there is a roadmap, and it's maybe one that we don't think a lot about. In my book, I talk about having balance in life in these 7 different elements. Now, we often think about living longer being physical, good exercise, good nutrition, get better sleep. And we also know that emotional health, so, having that resiliency, which a lot of those World War II vets certainly had, is important. But probably the number one thing that we can do to live longer is our social health, our quality of our relationships, having at least one confidant, also being involved in community. That's really number one. And all the studies out there, including the one at Harvard that's been done for 80 years, shows it's really about our relationships.
Relationships, all right. Having strong relationships, investing time in friendships and strong relationships. Dr. Giorgiani, you take a slightly different approach. One, it's a little bit more focused on the medical, but you have a very powerful line. You say start in your 20s to make a difference in your 70s and 80s and beyond. Tell us about that.
Absolutely. There is no secret to longevity. We all know the secret. The hardest part is getting going. And the time to get going is not when you're 60 to plan on living to be 100, but when you're in your 20s, particularly guys, our health system starts to deteriorate and get a little worse around the halfway mark in our 20s, maybe early 30s. So just like your financial health, you can't start saving when you're 60 years old to have sufficient funds to last you in your hundreds. The other part of this is you really need to pay attention to overall wellness, nutrition, balance, vaccinations. That's terribly important. Get regular checkups. It's the kind of thing that most guys don't do. In fact, I'm sure Sherri would agree that women have twice as many primary care medical visits a year than do men.
That's
men
right.
just don't go. And that's important. When you do go, get your numbers, know your numbers, keep track of them. And then lastly, I also want to say something very important.
Yeah.
Women know it, women do it, guys don't necessarily do it, is listen to your bodies. If you're not feeling well, get it checked.
Yeah.
If you're feeling emotionally hurt, talk with somebody about it. Women do this naturally. Guys tend to wait until it's very, very late to get even painful conditions. Yeah. That's not the way to live to be 100.
Sherri, let's go through a few more on your side, but particularly I wanted to touch on being optimistic, being grateful, and believing in a higher power. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I think when we're seeing the rise in secularism in America, and it's not any, joke that also corresponds with increased mental health issues. The U.S. Surgeon General just said that 1 in 2 Americans are lonely. And some of this has to do with our spiritual wellness. When we're spiritually bankrupt, we have less hope and optimism. We have less grounding. And so that becomes a really key element, having gratitude, but also having that belief in a faith and a higher power. The other side that I think is interesting is our brain health. I do a lot of work in brain health and neuroscience. And, again, we think about good things for our brains are moving and sleep and all that, but environmental health, being in nature, when we have a lot of technology in our lives, we have to balance that with nature because that's what our brains crave. So whether it's being outside in nature or bringing the nature inside is really key.
Doctor, the thing that you mentioned that I think really, strikes with me is if you think that it's all in your head, that if you're not feeling well, it's just in my head. That you can't allow that to keep you from taking care of your body and actually going and seeking medical attention. Just reinforce that for us one more time, because I think that's really important.
It is very important. All too often, unfortunately, when someone goes into a primary care visit or a checkup, they say, I'm just not feeling right. I have this terrible feeling. I'm just not doing things I want to do. I just don't enjoy myself. I'm not socializing the way I used to. Unfortunately, because there's a very, very limited amount of time for a current medical visit, 10 minutes or less, that gets skipped over, and all too often we hear, it's all in your head, just don't pay it. But you can't do that.
Yeah.
You must listen to your body. You must be mindful about what your body is telling you. You can't let the time pressures on physicians, nurses, practitioners push you away.
That's right. Take your time in the doctor's office and think about mental health as well as physical health if you want to live to 100. Folks, my daughter's going to be double digits next month, and I mentioned to her that she could end up being triple digits. So if you follow this advice, maybe so can you out there. And Dr. Georgiani and Sherri Snelling, thank you so much. We appreciate you.
My pleasure.